Hello, everyone. This is the Gridiron Review, and we are breaking down day 2 of the NFL Draft 2023. Starting off, the Pittsburgh Steelers took what everyone probably imagined would be the pick in Joey Porter Jr. He joins his dad's legacy. We thought this may be the pick in the first round. A lot of people probably did, but Detroit or Pittsburgh in general is winning this draft.
Yeah, it's not just Pittsburgh; it's all of Philly who will come up later. But Porter was the obvious pick here. We've been saying it for the, pretty much the entire time. That dates back to Porter going in our first round mocks, but um, this is right where we had Porter. We thought he was a little bit overhyped, so seeing him go early in the second was right around where we thought it would be.
And we're glad it's Pittsburgh. It's a great story. At 33, Will Levis went off the board finally. Well, not for us finally. We've had him as a second round graded prospect since the beginning of January. So he goes to a situation where Malik Willis seems to be out, and he gets to play backup and learn behind the quarterback that's one of his most favorable comps in Ryan Tannehill. We also saw shades of Baker Mayfield, but Tannehill is someone who is now an old veteran, and he was on the brunt end of scrutiny early in his career, mostly because of Adam Gase, but at the time, people didn't realize how much of an idiot he was. So Tennessee was able to take advantage of the board in both the first and the second round. They got an offensive lineman that was much needed, and here they get their quarterback of the future, most theoretically. And we also think this is truthfully the best thing possible for Will Levis and his career. The slice of humble pie, as Rogers called it, is going to do him wonders to me. At 34, Detroit rebounded from their rusty first round and took Sam Laporta. He was our tight end one as far as receiving upside goes. He's basically a big receiver. He is a willing blocker, but we don't think that's how he'll be played at the NFL, at least not early in his career. They do have Brock Wright to be the blocking tight end, and we think, especially with Jamison Williams out, Laporta's going to play more out wide early on, and then we'll see how he develops in the blocking aspect. At 35, the Raiders took Michael Mayer, ignoring needs again. They've done this time and time again in this draft, and again, it's not even a bad pick. Mayer is worth this pick, but is he better than Austin Hooper? Yeah, there's not a question about this, but is he so much better that they continue to ignore the offensive line and secondary? We don't think so. There's still a lot of guys left that they could have gone with, and it's just the disappointing draft continues for the Raiders, and the head scratchers with Josh McDaniels as coach do not end. The Rams take Steve Avila. Jack can fill us in more on that, but the Rams had needs everywhere, so pretty much any pick they took was going to be a decent one as long as it was a good player.
Yeah, as Zach said, the Rams are the only other team really, other than the Cardinals, that you look at and think that they pretty much could have taken anything and it would have been considered pretty much a good pick as long as, they didn't take something like a Seattle pick. But with Stafford coming off a year of injuries and that being kind of like the last couple of years of his career, protecting him is one of the priorities, especially if you want him to continue playing for at least another year or two, while you find your quarterback of the future and then develop him. Avila should be fine for the run game, for the pass game. Our biggest concern there is that he's nearly blind when it comes to seeing stunts and blitzes, so that needs to get worked out very quickly, or it's going to look like a bad pick right off the bat.
Derek Hall went to the Seattle Seahawks, not really a position of need. I know a lot of people had mocked pass rushers to them, but they have Uchenna Nwosu, Darrell Taylor, Boye Mafe. Unless they're looking to move off from both Mafe and Taylor, an interior pass rusher probably would have been better. They did kind of address it later with an undersized tackle. We'll get to that pick. Falcons took an offensive lineman, and the Carolina Panthers took one of our biggest sleepers. Not sleepers in the sense that they're a day two guy that could easily be vying for the title of best receiver from this class. Jonathan Mingo seems to be divisive amongst the community. We're on the side that thinks he's got a lot of upside. He has shades of A.J. Brown. That's not our comp for him. We think he's more Michael Floyd, for the old Arizona Cardinal receiver. But he does have that kind of build as A.J. Brown and probably that kind of upside. He's not as experienced as most of the Ole Miss receivers are coming out of college. But in Carolina, he's not going to be the number one right away. He's probably going to be the number 3 for a couple weeks until DJ Chark gets hurt. And then, he can learn from Thielen. It's a great situation. Carolina took an iffy quarterback with Bryce Young. A lot of people love that pick. We're in the minority that it was too safe, but they immediately help him out by getting Jonathan Mingo. Isaiah Foskey to the Saints just feels like their kind of pick. Heavy-handed, big D end with a decent athleticism. Not the best, but not the worst. He fills the role of Marcus Davenport, and we even stated that even with the addition of Brian Brzee, they were still missing an outside pass rusher, and they get it here. Cardinals, B.J. Ojulari, it's fine. Pass rusher was a need. There's probably other guys that would have taken here. Luke Musgrave to the Packers, one of our lesser picks in the draft. We didn't like him. We had him rated way below what other people did. He's got injury concerns. He's got lack of great blocking. He's a good athlete. He's not a great athlete. And we really don't like this pick. We would have gone one of the many receivers. We know they addressed the receivers with someone that we'll cover in a minute, but just Packers continue to draft head-scratchingly in the last 5 years or so. The Jets made a great pick with Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin.
Yeah, Tippmann is a prospect that when we went through our final mock and got to the Jets, he was actually one of our candidates to be taken at 15. And then we ended up going a different route, but he was worthy of a first-round pick. So to get him at your position in the second round was extreme value. Again, they were talking about how athletic he was. It's hard to tell without the testing, but he didn't seem as athletic as someone like Schmitz on the tape, but he got the job done. Very old school. At pick 44, Julius Brents. As I was telling Zach when they picked him, he was originally our Colts pick in the second round before I switched it at the last minute. They did just trade Gilmore for a bag of peanuts, and before this pick, we're relying on Kenny Moore and Isaiah Rodgers to be their corners, and neither one of them stands anywhere near 6 foot, I believe. So to get a big corner like Brent at 6, believe he's 6'3". Many people think that he could be moved to safety, but more than likely he's going to be left at corner here, where he'll be developed and continue to work the outside while the other two battle it out to see who's going to take the other outside spot. At pick 45 is Detroit went back to their first round ways. They took Brian Branch, and this has nothing to do with Branch as a prospect. Branch to us was a very clear-cut first rounder. As we talked about, he has the versatility to play safety. He primarily played nickel. He even played some will linebacker for the Crimson Tide. But this is more about the fit in Detroit. They extended Tracy Walker 3 years last March. They then drafted Kirby Joseph, I believe, in the third last year. They brought in Gardner Johnson. I just don't see where you're fitting him in. And some people are speculating that they'll move him out to corner, but I didn't think his coverage skills were good enough to move out to corner. So if they do decide to do that, that's going to be a huge adjustment for him. At pick 46, the Patriots took Keon White. The only thing I want to say about this pick is I don't think I've ever seen a prospect look so miserable on their draft day.
That was something. That's like George Pickens last year, but not in any way the same. Like, that's going to be played. That's going to be replayed. I don't know what it was. He was one of the guys that was not taken, that was in the green room, so it could have been about that. But that was weird because not often did I see him in the first round lately. So not quite sure what that was about. But as far as a fit goes, Keon White is super raw with a ton of athletic upside. Didn't think he was a first rounder at any way, but this pick is fine here. This is a total New England move. They love taking the super athletic pass rushers like they did with Josh Uche. and giving them time to develop. I don't expect to see results from Keon White for 2 years, but when they do, expect it to be very good, like Uche last year, where he had like 11 sacks in 7 games, I think it was. Do you want to talk about Jartavius Martin? Or
No, we can pass on that.
At 48, the Buccaneers, great pick. Cody Mauch fits a need.
Toothless and ruthless. That's how I start all of my explanations with him. Mauch is a player that I thought looked really good at tackle, and I think we were in the minority when we called him a tackle on our rankings more than an interior offensive lineman. He does have 5-spot versatility. The nice thing for the Buccaneers here is that they have a need at both tackle and guard, so they can figure it out and see how he competes at both spots, and he'll play wherever he looks the best when September rolls around.
At 49, the Steelers took Keanu Benton. This is a player that is more projection than immediate impact. He's going to help out in the run because they need that severely, but there's multiple other tackles I had ranked over. This isn't a bad pick by any means. It definitely was a need, but we just feel like, and I feel like there was other players that would have been better here at the same position. Again, the upside is there, so it's not hard to blame them. At pick 50, the Green Bay Packers went and got Jaden Reed. A subtle surprise based on who else was there, but the fit makes total sense. He's primarily a slot receiver, but he can play on the outside if you ask him to. We compared him to Sterling Shepard, and I feel like this is one of those picks where they could have gone any of the receivers available, but Reed fits what they're missing pretty well, and wouldn't be surprised if he leads them in targets in his rookie year and moving forward. This was one of the picks with Green Bay that we actually agreed with. At 51, the Dolphins make their first pick, and it's Cam Smith.
Yeah, the Dolphins, they're one of the best put together rosters, so it is kind of a luxury pick, but you just traded for Jalen Ramsey, and, it wasn't even just a trade. You finessed the Rams. Cam Smith is probably a top 5 coverage corner in this class, but in terms of run support, very high effort, will run stuff down, but his tackling is rough. He can't finish, and I just don't see where he fits in Miami unless they see him as a developmental piece that is going to take a year or two by the time Xavier or Ramsey are out of there.
It's definitely possible. At 52, the Seattle's going to Seattle. Zach Charbonnet. This makes a minuscule of sense because they may feel like they want to run a committee backfield, but then why'd you draft JSN? Like, that was a good pick for you, but if you're going to insist on being a rushing offense, something's not adding up here. It's a shame because Charbonnet is now out the window for, we're not a fantasy football website, but the value just tanked. For being the third running back taken in this draft, it is shocking to see that Seattle's the one that pulled the trigger. There's plenty of running backs still on the board now after day 2, and it's hard to believe they couldn't have gotten someone else on day 2 and figured out something else with this pick. On day 3. With the 53rd pick, the Chicago Bears took Javon Dexter. Love it. They needed some tackle help. He's more projection. He can help out now with the run, but he is an athletic monster. And they actually double dip later in the day 2 with this, but we love the pick. We love the fit to Chicago. Ryan Poles seems to prove that he's quickly becoming one of the better GMs in football. At 54, Tui Tuipulotu. Didn't like him. He was actually my worst rated edge of all the players I looked at. He's nothing special. His production was against a lot of lesser opponents. We really don't like, the Chargers have other needs again. And I guess he's developmental, but there's still guys like Adebaware who is a tackle, but he's an athletic animal at tackle. I don't know. This just personally, I didn't love this pick. I think there was other pass rushers that they could have had that fit better, that if you really wanted to go that route. But at 55, the Chiefs took one of my favorite receivers in the second group, and that's Rashee Rice. It's a shame because he may not be a high target guy right away, but he fits in well with the speed of Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Valdez-Scantling. He's a jump ball specialist, great hands. His route running is decent, not great, but he is wicked after the catch. They're going to be menaces to stop on that team. Every one of them can make you miss after the catch, and the Chiefs just get richer here. At Tyreek Stevenson, 56 to the Bears, addressing a pretty big need.
Yeah. So the Bears did take Kyler Gordon in last year's class. I can't remember if it was the second or third round, but I know it was a day 2. And they just continue to load up for the battle that is the NFC North with Detroit. I mean, obviously J-Mo's out, but they have Amon-Ra they got to cover, as well as, I know I'm missing somebody, the Vikings, Jefferson, now Addison. The Packers now have 3 receivers with the drafting of Jaden Reed. Stevenson actually transferred to Miami because he wanted to play outside corner, whereas he played the star position at the University of Georgia. So Stevenson, Gordon, and Johnson now combined to create one of the better young trios in the NFL. At pick 57, the Giants land John Michael Schmitz. A little bit later than we would have thought, especially considering we saw Schmitz mocked to the Giants in the first round. Probably more than you would think. For as bad as the Giants line has been over the last 5-ish years, when Dable and Shane came in, their first goal was to improve this line. Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, Mark Lewinsky was brought in from Indy. They took 2 UNC guards last year. The only spot they're missing now was center because Feliciano and Gates were both lost in free agency. Schmitz is going to become Daniel Jones' new best friend and should be the centerpiece of that line for years to come.
Yeah, and then the Cowboys make a Cowboy pick at 58 with Luke Schoonmaker. I felt like scouting Schoonmaker was looking at an old school tight end. He can block, he can go out and catch passes. He's not special athletically. He's similar, it's not an exact comp because Schultz is a better run blocker, but it feels like it's what they already have with Jake Ferguson. This felt really early for Schoonmaker. I didn't see him as tight end 1 upside. I saw him as a really good tight end 2, especially, with the other tight ends on the board. This felt like a reach for Dallas, and I don't know if, I guess Schoonmaker starts right away, but I don't love it. I think Ferguson could have done exactly what Schoonmaker is going to do without, I don't want to call this a waste because it's not a horrible pick, but at 59, the Bills address the offensive line with Osiris Torrance.
Yeah, the Bills taking offensive linemen is something that we've actually talked about quite a lot within the last 3 days between the mock and just kind of everything else. We thought that if the Bills were going to take offensive line help, it was going to be at the tackle position. Spencer Brown is coming off an extremely rough season with minimal depth behind him and Dawkins. Whereas at guard, they brought in the Dallas Connor McGovern and David Edwards from the Rams, and they're making they're exploring all the options for the guard spot, and then they just brought in a rookie. So even though Ryan Bates is not like a household name, he is coming off a strong season, so they must be worried about McGovern's ability to stay healthy or something. Torrance is a punishing run blocker, but his pass pro worries us when it comes to the more elite defensive linemen. So if the goal was to protect Allen, then you may see up and down results at first, but if you're looking to just create more holes for Cook and Harris and whoever else they may bring in, that's the right answer. At pick 60, DJ Turner to the Bengals. Turner was not one that we had a chance to look at, primarily because his name became much bigger after running a 4.2 whatever he ran 40. And I mean, take that with a grain of salt. John Ross ran fast. He never turned out to be anything. Not saying Turner won't be, but we won't prioritize guys like that and throw them at the top of the list because they ran for too. At 61, the Jags took Brenton Strange, and Zach can expand on that a little bit more.
Strange was one of our favorite sleeper tight ends. Didn't expect him to go on day 2 just because the hype wasn't there, it didn't seem. Strange is a great run blocker. He's ferocious with it, and he's a complete package basically at tight end. He's underrated as a receiver. Penn State didn't use him a ton in that way, but he has decent athleticism. This is interesting because he couldn't be more different from Evan Ingram. It's Doug Peterson must have an idea of something he wants to do on offense to take him this early. And it's not early. It's just we thought he was going to be a high upside sleeper. The Jags could go I don't know. They're setting up to have a really good offense. I'm not sure exactly what schemes they have in mind. It's not going to be 12 personnel with Evan Ingram. It's going to be who knows, but it's fun to see what Jacksonville is building. At 62, the Texans took Juice Scruggs. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all.
Yeah. So Scruggs, along with Stromberg, who was picked later on in the draft, not going to expand too much so I can get to them, but there are two more guys in this extremely elite center class that I looked at for day 1 and day 2 grades on. Two of them fell into the day 3, which was kind of Whitebler was more surprising than Oluwatimi. But Scruggs is gonna go snap for his rival quarterback from Ohio State and now teammate, and we mocked them Tittman in our last mock with the second pick of the second round. So this is not a surprise by any means that they went center. At pick 63, the Broncos took Marvin Mims. We think that this is probably a sign that despite them saying they're not going to, they probably are going to move one of their receivers.
Yeah, they do get some speed that Cortland Sutton. I mean, Judy's not slow, but he's also not a burner by any means. And not that Mims is necessarily in that role either. We compared him to Darius Slayton, but he's probably got more upside than Slayton does. This is definitely a sign. If they keep all 4, that's kind of weird. The odd man out is probably Tim Patrick, but really anyone. At this point, it would either be for a day 3 pick or a next year's pick. I don't know. This is a weird pick. I don't hate it because Mims does have a lot of upside. It's just, it'll be interesting to see how this fits into Denver's plans moving forward. At 64, the Bears double dipped at athletic projection-based defensive tackles. Love the pick. Chicago, my bad, continues to build an impressive team. And they're going to have a very effective run defense if they're able to develop Pickens and Dexter. It's a great spot for him. I didn't have Pickens as a second round grade. I had him as a third round. But you're getting 2 D tackles that athletically could be one of the best in the league. Skill-wise, they're still far ways away, but they're big, they're strong, they're athletic. There's a lot to like here. The Eagles forfeited or skipped their 65th pick and then made them together. I don't know if that was just Howie trying to be funny or if there is, really trying to figure out what to do here. They took Tyler Steen, a tackle from Alabama, and Sidney Brown, the safety from Illinois.
Correct. So at pick 65 was Tyler Steen. Again, he was on my list and just never got to him. He was a guy that transferred in from Vanderbilt. A lot of hype around him when they got him out of the portal. Despite being a tackle at Alabama, a lot of people think that he's going to move inside to guard. The NFL Network people were talking that right now it seems like the Eagles are going to move forward with moving Jurgens to guard to replace Sayamalu. Steen is going to follow a similar path to Jurgens, that he's going to sit and develop behind what's probably the best offensive line coach in football, along with some of the best starters in all of football. And when the time comes for Kelsey to finally step away, Jurgens will take over the center spot, with hopefully the goal being that Steen will be ready to take over at guard. And then at pick 66 was Sidney Brown. Brown was a prospect that I heard a little bit about at the Senior Bowl, didn't really stand out, and then his name and his projection skyrocketed after he tested like a freak at the combine. Again, I didn't throw him at the top of my safeties list because of a combine, because I had other names that I liked more. I did turn on his tape earlier this week, and I turned it off about 7 minutes into the game that I was watching because it was missed tackle after missed tackle, and he just kind of looked lost at points. Maybe I watched the wrong game, but for the Eagles' inability to find consistent safety play, this is not the answer. They do not have anyone on their roster right now that's going to be able to mentor him. He does supply special teams, but that's pretty much it. At pick 67, the Broncos got arguably our steal of the draft with Drew Sanders. I'm kind of surprised the Eagles didn't jump on Sanders with how far he fell. I'm very curious to know why he fell. He was our linebacker 1, and it wasn't particularly close. The fact that Campbell went at 18 and the next linebacker went at 67 is actually insane. But Denver has not had a linebacker like Sanders in a very long time. He is raw simply on the fact that he was moved to inside backer when he transferred to Arkansas, but he's sideline to sideline. He's versatile. He's going to get the job done in Vance Joseph's defense in Denver. At pick 68, the Lions took Hendon Hooker, and Zach can take this one away.
So Hooker is someone we really didn't have first-round grades on. The late hype for him is one that we understood because he probably aced his meetings, but from an age standpoint, from coming off an ACL injury, I know he's ahead of schedule by all accounts, but for someone that a big part of his game is his mobility, you just don't know until he's in live action. He reminded us not too much, but he was very similar to someone like Mitchell Trubisky or a little bit better Teddy Bridgewater. The comp of a more athletic Sam Bradford also fits. That's what NFL did. He's an athletic game manager, and those guys shouldn't be drafted in the first round, and I'm kind of glad he wasn't, but he also found a pretty good location. He's basically he's going to do what Jared Goff did last year, but with more athleticism. I don't see him having much better seasons beyond what Goff did last year. The difference is Goff has never been heralded for his leadership, and Hooker is going to. So the fact that the Lions were able to wait and get a quarterback that, if Goff for whatever reason fails this year, or if they just want to get out of his contract after this season, Hooker should be ready to go. Detroit's had such an up and down draft, but this was one of the picks we liked. At 69, the Texans took Tank Dell. It's an okay pick. He adds some speed that they're missing, but Jalen Hyatt was still there. I don't know. It's not the best pick in the world. It's not the worst. He's a good route runner, but he's undersized. I don't know. Houston, another team that's had an up and down draft. There's other receivers we would have taken here. At 70, the Raiders took Byron Young because why not? It's a mystery what the Raiders are doing. They continue to ignore offensive line, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get hurt, and then it's Brian Hoyer, and who knows what happens there. They continue to ignore secondary. They're going to get torched in the AFC West. It's just not a good look. At 71, the Saints took Kendre Miller. Don't have a problem with them taking running back, except for the fact that Miller's probably not going to do much more than what Jamal Williams will do. He definitely has more juice than Williams, but it's not like you're going to pair a thunder and a lightning per se. Kendre Miller reminded us a lot of Gus Edwards, and I think Devon Achane would have made more sense here, but it's not an awful pick. Again, it is a need. It's just, I don't know. I'm not in love with the fit. At 72, the Cardinals addressed their secondary with a guy coming off a torn ACL. At 73, the Giants got a very good steal here with Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt, we had a fringe first-round grade on based on projections, but we understand why he did fall. We didn't think it would be this far, but we do get it. He's got a ton of speed, but in the Giants system where they have multiple slot receivers already, he's got to learn how to play on the outside, something he never did at Tennessee. So he probably won't play a ton right away, but the upside is insane with his athleticism. He's got a lot to learn, but this is what the Giants are missing. They didn't have a ton of speed at the wide receiver position, so love the fit. At 74, the Browns took Cedric Tillman, one of the most overrated wide receivers, in my opinion, in this draft. Yeah, he's big, but he's a very bad body catcher. It's a horrible habit that he has. He drops it too many. He's an okay route runner, but it's hard to see what Cleveland's doing with the wide receiver room unless, the Purdue receiver they drafted last year just isn't there. They went and traded for Elijah Moore. They have Amari Cooper. This felt like a reach to me. I don't know. It's not a bad pick because receiver, you can always have more receivers. But for this being their first pick, I was underwhelmed. I thought other receivers would have been better value here. And again, I don't see Tillman ever being more than a wide receiver 3. So this is probably way too early for him. At 75, the Falcons took my biggest sleeper at edge with Zach Harrison. He's obviously not an unknown player because of how highly touted he was coming out of college. He's an athletic monster. He may be the most impressive athlete at edge in this class. He's over 6'5", and the reports were he didn't run at the Combine or his pro day, but that he was in the high 4.4s, and that sounds ridiculous, but when you watch the film, he moves. He's a developmental prospect. He's never even come close to the ceiling that he had coming out of high school, but in Atlanta, there's a ton of veterans there now. Calais Campbell, Bud Dupree, Lorenzo Carter. They all can teach him different things. And I'm happy because he's not going to be anything more than a rotational pass rusher to start, but his upside is Marcus Davenport-ish, and we really like that. Atlanta waited until a little bit later to take a pass rusher, and they take one with as much upside as Zach Harrison. At 76, New England takes their signature small school guy that didn't get invited to the Combine on day 2 in Marte Mapu. We didn't really get to him, but...
Yeah, we didn't get to Mapu, but from what they're explaining about him, he's the signature safety linebacker hybrid that they already have about 7 of on their roster. It does sound like Mapu, unlike the other ones, is going to be more of a backer, which is good considering their room of linebackers is less athletic, to say the least, with Bentley and Tavai. It is a little bit un-New England-like, unless they're expecting him to be something in the mold of like Jamie Collins or something like that. But New England continues to make head-scratching moves as they do every year, although somehow some of their picks always turn out right.
I was going to say, we don't like this one as much as the Keon White pick, where the fit seems kind of obvious. Now, again, like Jack said, it's athleticism added to the linebacker room that's lacking it. But they do have a lot of guys, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers. Yeah, big safeties, like heavy safeties that kind of play a similar role of like hybrid linebacker safeties. But if Mapu sticks at linebacker exclusively, New England's is pretty good at drafting linebackers. So we'll have to see how it works out. At 77, the LA Rams took the other Byron Young, and the Rams need everything. So this is, no matter what they chose, it wasn't going to necessarily be a bad pick. Young is explosive for an athlete. He needs some development, and he's on the older side. I believe he's 25, so that's kind of working against him. But pass rush they need. They can't have 310-pound Michael Hawk, or however you say his last name, at an edge linebacker position. It's just a bad look. So they get more explosive, and it's a good pick. If he was younger, he probably would have been a high second round, maybe even late first round, but we like it. At 78, the Packers took Tucker Kraft, their second tight end of the day. This pick, unlike the Musgrave one, we like a lot more. Kraft is South Dakota State. A lot of people compare him to Dallas Goedert. I didn't think he was as good as Goddard. I thought he was similar to Schoonmaker in that they do everything. They're not special athletically, but he can do everything for you. He's definitely a traditional tight end. And we see the fit in Green Bay a lot more. And again, Green Bay's draft was all over the place, but we do like the selections of Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft. At 79, the Colts went and got Josh Downs. This is the perfect receiver to fill out their room. He's an elite route runner. He's undersized, but he's not going to be asked to be the number one, which he shouldn't be. He pairs really well with what Pittman offers. and Alec Pierce and Jelani Woods and Anthony Richardson, whenever he's ready, is going to have good weapons. The Colts continue to have an uncharacteristically normal and expected draft, taking positions of need. At pick 80, the Panthers took DJ Johnson. Not sure if you want to address this or not.
I think he was an edge more so than a linebacker.
Yeah, they needed more juice in the edge. They're missing that pass rusher next to Brian Burns because Yetur Gross-Matos never really worked out. But he's more of a developmental guy. It's a good positional pick. At 81, the Titans took Tyjae Spears. It was a C grade for us initially because we have multiple running backs rated higher than him. And he's not the same as Derrick Henry. So if they decide that they want to move on from Henry, it's an odd replacement. But then we heard the reports that he doesn't have an ACL and his knee is arthritic. So this immediately moves down to a D- or even an F. Why would you do this? This is too high of a pick. Spears, if that report was available to everyone, Spears wasn't going anywhere near day 2. And it's a shame because he's a good story from Tulane, but taking a guy without an ACL and an arthritic knee at pick 81 is just, it's not a good look. At 82, the Buccaneers took Yaya Diaby. It's an okay selection. Shaq Barrett got hurt, and they didn't really have much beyond him. Joe Tryon has really not developed like they expected. We'll see if he works out. It's not a pick we love. It's not a pick we hate. At 83, the Broncos took superstar corner, Iowa white boy, one of many in the secondary, Riley Moss.
Yeah. So Moss is one who actually had himself a really strong draft process, played well in the Senior Bowl, came out and tested pretty athletically at the combine, was good in the positional drills. The issue is that when you turn on the tape, it's not there. Like I think it was a 4th or a 5th round grade on him, and it's not that we don't like him, we do, but he just needs more development than people realize. People are calling him a ball hawk, and like one of the things we do when we look at corners is that you go to the highlight film and you look at the picks and see if they're a true ball hawk. Most of the picks that I saw from him were thrown right at him or off a tipped ball. That's not ball hawking. I mean, a turnover is a turnover, don't get us wrong, but like from a coverage standpoint and even a bit of a run support standpoint, he just needs development. And if you look at the Broncos room right now, outside of Surtain, it's Damari Mathis, their 4th rounder from last year, who had an extremely rough rookie season, or at least to start he did. I don't know if he picked it up towards the end. Moss is more than likely going to take over that cornerback 2 spot, and Peyton and his coaching staff need to expect a ton of up and down plays from him throughout his rookie year. At pick 84, Devin Achane, typical Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan type pick to add to their farm of running backs.
Yeah, this is a pretty great fit. The Dolphins continue to get faster, if that's even possible. Achane reminded me, the NFL analysts were saying they didn't think he could be an every down back due to his size. I disagree. I think he can. I mean, obviously there's risk when you're small, but Achane is lightning in a bottle. He can catch some passes, a lot of screens. Mostert's probably going to go down after 2 great weeks, and beyond that, they don't have a lot of juice in the running back room, and Achane is that guy. Great fit. Love the pick, especially because we have Abanaconda ranked over Achane, but since the Dolphins run that running back by committee, Achane fits better as a less touches per game type of guy. At 85, the Chargers took Dian Henley. We didn't really get a chance to look at him, right? But
No, I did.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
So reports came out right after this pick that Kenneth Murray, his 5th-year option was declined, which isn't shocking at all. For the first-round pick that he did not develop in the way that anyone had hoped. Henley, I know a lot of people were higher on him than we were. I think we looked at 11 linebackers. He ranked out as 10th. He's an interesting prospect because he played safety, backer, and receiver at Nevada before transferring to Washington State. And when you play three positions, there's just no way you can work on your craft. And when you turn on the tape, you can tell he's lacking the linebacker instincts and that he's just not ready to be a three-down player. The nice thing is that the Chargers do have Murray for an extra season before he becomes a free agent. Kendricks is obviously going to be linebacker one there. Murray's going to play early downs, and I think Henley's going to spell him when it's third down and passing downs. Henley isn't – his comp's not Drew Tranquil, but I think he's going to do similar things in the Chargers defense where he's going to shoot gaps and he's going to blitz and just be disruptive. At pick 86, the person the Chargers should have taken, Trenton Simpson, much like Sanders, it's mind-boggling how he falls this far. He was our linebacker too. He is raw. There is a lot of holes in his game, but we thought that when you look at him versus Campbell, who was our linebacker 3, Simpson's athletic upside and just the flashes that he had on tape showed that he could be a three-down backer. And in no, Martindale's not there anymore. The Ravens defense, Simpson is going to be blitzed a ton. He's going to have to do a lot of things, but he also doesn't have to be like the guy to do it all. He's going to be playing next to one of the best in football and Roquan Smith, and there's just something about Baltimore that they're really good with developing linebackers, and people are going to look back, particularly the Chargers probably, and regret not taking Simpson one pick earlier. At pick 87, Jair Brown. Brown was a prospect we did not have a chance to look at until like Tuesday night. I was very hesitant to look at him because when Daniel Jeremiah tells you his tape looks good at the combine, you don't want to look at him. I got to give Jeremiah credit, though. He was right. Brown was a do-it-all safety. He hits like a strong safety. He can roam the back end like a free safety. He does have some things to clean up, but this fit is kind of funny because we comped him to Jimmy Ward, who they just lost to Houston. So expect Brown to slide in next to Hufanga right away and be an impact player on day one.
At 88, the Jaguars took Tank Bigsby. Couldn't be more disappointed in Jacksonville, who's building something special. I know the highlight film that they showed looked great, but that must have been the 8 plays where he was making people miss. He earns his nickname of Tank because he's very powerful, and he pairs very well with Etienne, but it just feels like this was 2 rounds too early for him. And there's other power backs like Roschon Johnson that we really would have loved to see in Jacksonville. It's not an awful fit. It's not a need because a power back to pair with Etienne is a good idea, but is he going to offer that much more than Snoop Connor? I don't think so. I think Bigsby is a power guy that is not much better than someone like Abram Smith coming out of Baylor last year. And it's not an impressive pick and disappointing for a team that's building something special. But that being said, this was probably a luxury pick, so it is what it is. At 89, the Rams took a small school guy in Kobe Turner. He is similar to Aaron Donald, not a comp by any means, an undersized tackle with a lot of athleticism. He's very raw, and whenever you get these small school guys, it's always risky. But again, as we said with every Rams pick, everything was a need, so this is not a bad pick. And, we hope that the LA Rams are able to find enough. They've traded back a bunch of times, amassing a lot of what we assume is late-round picks that will end up being starters because of how shallow their team is. And we expect Kobe Turner to probably start pretty soon as the DT2.
So one thing I want to add about that pick is that when you look at the Rams team, as bad as they are, the one thing that they did is they did kind of set themselves up to where certain things weren't a need, particularly the secondary, as they took Darion Kendrick and Jacoby Durant, who had a really good rookie season. Despite all the needs, and I think that the Cardinals are kind of doing something similar. is that we tell our high school football players all the time, like the game is won in the trenches. So like the fact that the Rams have gone and taken Avila, Turner, and Byron Young, that's where it all starts. If you can't win up front, you're gonna lose every game, and if then building that up is the first step in, you know, winning games.
And it's also worth noting that they may have been the two biggest issues for the Rams last year. Besides Aaron Donald, they were starting Michael Hawk. Shouldn't be starting. They lost Greg Gaines, who was their starting tackle too.
And
Although he
Deshaun
did,
Robinson.
yeah, and they lost Ashawn Robinson. And on the offensive line, it was a mess. So they're rebuilding. They're taking the right positions. And we actually like the Rams draft for not having a ton of picks. At pick 90, the Cowboys continue to address the defense with DeMarvion Overshown.
Overshown, not quite sure where I got this thought about him, but I thought he was going to be much better in space than he was. He was actually a better box player than in space. He is a little bit of a developmental piece. He does shoot gaps well. Part of his comp was actually to his now teammate Damone Clark. He spies well, and that's what the NFL Network guys were saying, and I agreed with them, which is kind of weird. Twice in a day. But in a division where you play Michael Vick and Jalen Hurts twice a year, and now Howell, if God bless, I hope he works out. You need someone that's going to be able to spy them. Overshown is that guy, and he has time to develop because you brought Van Der Esch back. Donovan Wilson plays in the box. Damone Clark is only on year 2 of his rookie deal, so he's not going to be rushed into play by any means. At pick 91, the Bills took Dorian Williams, the linebacker out of Tulane. We don't hate the positional fit. They definitely needed to replace Tremaine Edmonds. We just thought that they were going to do it earlier to replace the size and athleticism of Tremaine Edmonds, especially with how well the 6'5" guys and Campbell and Sanders did at the combine in their pro days. At pick 92, Wanya Morris, the tackle out of Oklahoma. Everyone thought Kansas City was going to land Anton Harrison at pick 31, and they fell about 4 picks short. So instead, they get his teammate who played right tackle. From what I've heard about Kansas City, they think extremely highly of Jawan Taylor, who they just brought in on a 4-year, $80 million contract. They believe that he could play all 5 spots if they asked him to. So with his NFL experience, they're probably going to ask him to kick to left to take over for Brown, and Morris is going to come in and compete with Lucas Niang for the right tackle spot. We expect Morris to win that battle, although he does have some development to do. So if Niang has to start for the first couple games to a year for Morris to become ready, that's completely fine. The goal is to protect Patrick Mahomes, so it really can't ask more of that. At pick 93, Darnell Washington reunites with Broderick Jones and George Pickens, nicknamed the Juggernaut, and in his Instagram bio is literally the 6th lineman. He fell because of the supposed swelling in his knee from the combine. We were texting back and forth the whole night, and every time there was a tight end needy team, it was, is this Washington? And Pittsburgh walks away with arguably one of the biggest steals of the draft.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this concern about his knee just came up very recently, but then the Titans went and drafted someone without an ACL. It's hard to believe, even with injuries aside, that Darnell Washington was not taken higher than this. The Packers took Luke Musgrave, who missed most of last season. Washington hasn't missed much time at all. It's worth noting. And this just feels like that pick where 5 years from now, it's going to be like, how in the heck did people pass on him? How did you take Luke Musgrave over Darnell Washington? How did you take, this is a great tight end class. It's an all-time historic class, but Darnell Washington offers something that maybe only Brenton Strange can battle with him for in run blocking, but Washington's on his own level. And Pittsburgh is not someone we ever envisioned taking him, but it makes sense when you think about it. They've done a lot to protect Kenny Pickett and improve the run game at the same time. And Darnell Washington helps with this. It's also worth mentioning that Pat Fryermuth has a concussion problem, it sounds like, where he's had 2 or 3, maybe even 4 already. So he may be out of the league sooner than Pittsburgh fans want. But Darnell Washington, amazing, amazing A++ pick for Pittsburgh, who is having maybe the best draft of anyone. At 94, the Cardinals take Michael Wilson, someone who really exploded onto the scene at the Senior Bowl. It's a great pick. He brings some much needed size, assuming Hopkins is moved. It doesn't seem like he's staying by any chance. So then it's a really short room. Great route runner, great hands. The biggest issue is medicals. He's had a lot of injuries, a lot of time missed. But if he's able to stay healthy and put it together, this will be a great pick for them. And at 95, the Bengals add more to the secondary at Jordan Battle. They did lose a lot and have some injuries there, so this is a really good pick.
Yeah, Battle is one that I looked at last June and turned the tape off after a game. Really just horrible tackler. Just looked so out of place. And when you turn on the 2022 tape, the difference is night and day. And we were in the minority when we ranked him as a nickel. I just thought that in terms of run support, he was much more active. He had a much better understanding of being aggressive in the box. However, with Mike Hilton in Cincinnati, you're obviously not stealing that spot away from him. He's been one of the best in the league for the past X amount of years now. Battle's going to slide in right next to Dax Hill, who we assume is taking the free safety spot, although he was our top-ranked nickel last year. So the Bengals really like to add nickelbacks to play safety, but I expect big things from Battle as well as Hill as they try to replace one of the better safety duos in the league in Bates and Bell.
At 96, the Lions went with Broderick Martin. It's fine. There's not much to say to this, to be honest. They needed a pass rushing D tackle to pair with their 2 run stuffers. Martin is not that. So it's not an awful pick, but I would have loved to have seen Adebaware here, or, taking Kalijah Kancey over Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I know like they say they loved him, they were going to take him at pick 6, but that, with all the running backs falling essentially and all of the linebackers falling, their first round is going to stick out like a sore thumb, even if the players work out. And I really hope they do, because I think everybody's rooting for Detroit. It just feels like the overdraft in the first round may haunt them. It's a shame because they've taken some guys who really like Sam Laporta. I love the pick. Broderick Martin is in the middle. He's a bigger tackle. He doesn't add anything new. Athletic upside, I guess, but it's just underwhelming. At 97, Washington took Ricky Stromberg. They continue to address needs except their pass rush, which is paper thin if someone gets hurt. And we hope on day 4 they draft one of the guys that's remaining.
Yeah, Stromberg is – we look at Washington's roster all the time because they are on paper. I know we said this last year, one of the better rosters. We think that if they were, much like Buffalo, if they were to add an offensive lineman, it would have been better to add tackle. They're paper thin. They're much like edge. Chase Roulier did miss last year with the season-ending leg injury, so this is probably just an insurance policy, although they did bring in Nick Gates. So, I mean, unless the plan is to cut somebody or 3-man competition, whatever it is, but at least they're trying to protect Howell. At pick 98, Siaka Ika, and the only thing I got to say about this is Myles Garrett this offseason has gotten more help than he's had since his rookie year.
Yeah, this pick, I love it. Ika, I didn't think was a first-round prospect after he got some attention there early on. Now, he definitely fell in the mock drafts, but he's not much of a pass rusher. There does seem to be a little bit of upside, but from what I saw, his athleticism for his size is not used in that way at all. He's got decent pass rushing moves, but there's not much there past getting the lineman. He doesn't chase people down, and it's understandable. I mean, he's massive. But what he's going to do is eat up double teams. It's very similar. I know NFL made this comp, but this was our comp as well as Danny Shelton. He's going to eat double teams. He's going to free up Myles Garrett, and I am blanking hard on the guy they added this year in free agency. And It's a great pick. The Cleveland Browns continue to help out Myles Garrett finally, and along with Perrion Winfrey, if he's able to develop from last year, we see Cleveland's defense. I mean, Myles Garrett could be in for a career year, as crazy as that is, considering the career he's had already.
The tackle you're thinking of is Tomlinson, but they also added Tristan Hill and Mo Hurst.
There you go. Dalvin Tomlinson, they're gonna have a run. They're gonna have a crazy run defense in the NFC North. I mean the AFC North. And at 99, as I was looking at this, I had to remind myself who the heck Jake Moody was. I was so confused looking at that. I thought it was one of your guys, Jack. This is an F grade. It's as simple as that. He could be the best kicker in the draft, and he probably is, but picking a kicker or a punter in the first 3 rounds is an F. It's just, you have Robbie Gould. I guess he's out. I don't know if he retired and I missed that. It's just why? Like Jake Moody, a kicker, as a Michigan fan, I don't even care. I know Rich Eisen was trying to make light of it with his very funny announcement, but San Fran, like, it's crazy to think that they have so few kicks, and one of their earliest picks was a kicker. Like just an F minus. It's hard to justify this pick. Kickers are revolving doors in the NFL. I know if you lock down a good kicker, but really in the NFL, Jake Tucker is the exception. Obviously, there's Justin Tucker. Whoops. Jake Moody's on my mind. And it's just not a great pick. It's a shame because San Fran's next pick is an A+, but this just sticks out so oddly. At pick 100, the Raiders took Trey Tucker. He's speed on the outside. That's what they need, but I don't know. They passed on Jalen Hyatt a couple times, and he's very small. He's only 5'8". Clearly speed was needed in the room. Again, Raiders just zigging when they should be zagging. I don't know. It's fine. It's a need. It's speed, but I don't know. I had Tyler Scott rated higher than him. At 101, the San Francisco 49ers took Cameron Latu, A+. He was our tight end 5 in this class, citing underutilization at Alabama, suggesting much more upside than his production would indicate. And we screened for the Chiefs to take Darnell Washington to get a second tight end beyond Travis Kelce. And we've been championing for the 49ers to add a second tight end behind George Kittle. Latu is the perfect tight end, too, for San Fran. He could play a similar role to Kittle, decent run blocking, decent athleticism, decent pass catching. And he's not going to play it like Kittle, obviously, but for someone that's as hurt as he is, San Fran has lacked a good backup for a long time. And this is a perfect destination for Latu. And then at 102, the Vikings took Mekhi Blackman. Secondary was absolutely a need.
Yeah, Blackman didn't get to him, but he's a prospect that has been getting a lot of buzz within the last few weeks. He was apparently Christian Gonzalez's teammate at Colorado before they both transferred last offseason. Apparently had a pretty good season with USC. I mean, you can't blame him for addressing corner. Pat Pete left. And, I mean, they did add Byron Murphy, who I forgot about when I was writing the explanation for this pick. Booth got hurt last year. Caleb Evans. I mean, he's going to go in and compete for a spot, considering that room is absolutely horrid in the NFC North, where there are tons of receivers that need to be covered. What happened to Keely Ringo? Like, I get Ringo is not as developed as people want him to be, but he's got the athletic upside. He's got production in SEC. How Mekhi Blackman was picked here, well, any corner really, with Ringo falling into day 3, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, there's a couple of big prospects that we were pretty high on still left, and we're going to be covering day 3 tomorrow at the conclusion. A couple of guys just to mention that's still there. There's a lot of running backs. The running backs definitely fell in a very strong class. Israel Abanaconda, he's not comped to Jonathan Taylor by us, but he's very similar testing-wise. We have him comped to Tevin Coleman. He has the workhorse capabilities. Roshan Johnson, there's a lot of running backs, like we said. Roshan Johnson, ton of wide receivers. For a weak class, there's a decent amount of sleepers. Someone like Puka Nacua from Brigham Young. Parker Washington from Penn State. There's a couple tight ends still on the board. Blake Whiteheart from Wake Forest is someone that was our deep sleeper. And there's still Blake Freeland from BYU is still there. DeJuan Jones didn't get picked, I don't believe. And as far as quarterbacks, you're going to start seeing like Dorian Thompson-Robinson is our favorite sleeper quarterback, and Clayton Tune is right there with him. So look out for our live tomorrow. Any videos and shorts we put up, we appreciate everyone watching, and we hope you're enjoying the draft as we are.